a playlist original.
Don't miss the freshest horror movie in decades. Starring this house,
I think someone's upstairs.
this wolf,
They've been watching us for days.
this cat,
This wasn't a random attack.
this sheep,
Why would anybody do this?
and this girl.
Grab anything that might make a good weapon.
You're next.
I've never seen you act like this before.
Well, it's a unique situation.
Star in theaters August 23rd.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives, where we talk about some of your favorite movies, or the movies that you might have forgotten about. You mentioned, or I mentioned, when we were doing the deep dives, the last few, that the show is changing a little bit. We're going to have different guests on, and have them picking the movies that we're going to deep dive into. And this week is no exception. We have another guest on, Jeremy Kibler, who's actually already been on the show back during our Tales of Horror on the main Back to the Blockbuster show. He discussed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original and the remake with us. So welcome again, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. I already know that you're a horror movie fan, and when I asked you, if you want to be on this, the deep dive stuff, I kind of figured we might get a horror movie. And I was perfectly fine with that, and I was very happy with what you ultimately chose. But before you get to the actual movie, just remind everyone a little bit of what you do, and where they can kind of find your stuff, or anything you want to share with people listening.
Yeah, so I live in the Philadelphia area. I'm a film critic. So I write for guyatthemovies.com. I also have a blog, theartfulcritic.com, that I always put all my work on. So I see a lot of movies each week. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Jeremy Kibler, Kibler
Nice.
Film Freak.
Hear all those good things, and we will make sure
Yeah.
to at the bottom of the description of the episode to link all of your stuff so people can find you as well.
Great.
So I'm excited to do this one. I'm really excited you picked this movie. So tell everyone what you picked for us to deep dive.
So I picked 2013's You're Next, the
Nice.
home invasion slasher movie. I believe it was on the shelf for a couple years, and then it finally got a release from Lionsgate.
It premiered at the film festival in 2011, so it didn't hit theaters until August of 2013, which is usually like a bad sign, but not in the case of this. I mean, I think it's also a very hard one to promote and market without giving anything away.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that could have been some of the issue, but I think, of course, like with a lot of movies like this, in the years since it came out, it's developed a pretty sizable cult following, and also was the introduction to Adam Wingard, at least for me, I guess, and for many people. And he's gone on to do some pretty interesting films as well. The Guest is like a personal favorite of mine that he's done, but this is a really good good introduction into his sensibilities as a filmmaker. And then also credit to Simon Barrett, who wrote the movie, because it's a nice blend of kind of slasher movie tropes that we're all familiar with, and it's a really funny kind of dark comedy as well. And it also kind of plays on the whole, like, if you think your family is dysfunctional, you have to watch and experience this. And it's also interesting too, because for Movie Web, I had to write something about how this movie has become like a Thanksgiving Day movie, just because the idea of, like, kind of have it in a dysfunctional sense. You're having your family together, and at the start of the movie, there's this whole awkwardness, right? About it's been a long time since they've all gotten together. You can tell there's like tension and stuff with the family, and then that sometimes exists at like big, like, kind of family gatherings, like over the holidays. And some people were sold on me saying that it kind of feels like a very offbeat Thanksgiving Day movie. So if you guys want to add it to your Thanksgiving Day rotation year after year, it's not a bad one. It's a fun one to kind of throw into the mix. So
That's a good point. I mean, yeah, it doesn't take place on Thanksgiving, but I believe it's the family's or the parents' wedding anniversary. They invite all
Anniversary,
their
yeah,
kids. But yeah, you nailed it. Like they're the family dynamics with the siblings, like they're one-upping each other. They're just needling each other and bringing
yeah.
up the past. And it's, I mean, I only have an older sister, but it is kind of relatable in those little nuances. Like, you're still always gonna bump heads with your siblings.
Yeah, for sure. This
So,
kind of happens. I'm pretty close with my immediate family, but it's when you bring in the extended members of the family sometimes, and
right.
throw them into like the holiday, like any kind of family gathering mix.
Mhm.
It starts out okay, and then there's a lot of like inappropriate comments. Like I mean, the fact that the family, you know, they have their significant others, and like some of the relatives are not, they are very not shy about commenting on their like thoughts on significant others.
Right.
Uh, uh, you kind of see it in that whole discussion where they're kind of talking about how Aaron, and her boyfriend met, and then there's like kind of that judgy, the circumstances and how they met, and the brother just kind of
She was
going
a
in
student. Yeah.
student, yeah, and like how going on how that inappropriate that was, and some family members do that. They will needle at you, and even though it's not appropriate to do so. So it's like those little things in it that are really fun to kind of poke fun at, and the dark comedy aspect of the film. But then it's also a really genuinely good slasher movie. Uh,
Yeah.
on top of that, and then of
Yeah.
course, like with most horror movies, Charlie Vincent as Aaron. I don't even call her an underrated final girl. I think at this point, a lot of people love her
Oh, yeah.
in this role, and I what makes her so good in this is that you believe that like she's so unassuming at first, like she doesn't give off any inkling that she has all of these skills that you eventually see that she has in the film. So she can play this kind of innocence, and then also you totally believe this kind of tough and determined, very smart, uh strong individual who is takes over when things go awry. And I'm just imagining in my head, because like once, I mean, if you've seen, like, of course there will be spoilers. This movie is kind of old, so we're
Yeah.
assuming if you listen to this, you've seen it. But I'm just imagining being in like some of their heads, and they're watching this girl do what she's doing, and they're like, "Well, fuck!" Like we weren't expecting home chick from that was raised in a survivalist compound to
Right.
be at this gathering. So it's like a really fun like curveball. Like once you watch it, knowing what the twists are, just thinking what could be running through their minds as they're watching her do what she does.
Yeah, Aaron is definitely a person you wanna have in your corner when your home is being invaded by all these killers.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, like, Sharni Vincent is definitely really appealing in the role, like, from the onset, and then, yeah, once the other shoe drops and you kinda see that she's maybe done this before, she knows what she's doing, and she's very resourceful. She's, she's strong, but yeah, she's not like inhuman either. Like she'll definitely
right.
get injured, but that's what I really like about her. Like she's a smart, resourceful heroine, but like she's, not immune to injury.
In pain,
So,
yeah. They don't make her some like
right,
indestructible like Terminator. Like it's not like
right.
that. And
No,
there are moments where you can tell like there is some kind of fear, like when she's surprised by certain things that are happening, that she's not expecting. Uh, she reacts in a very human way, but then she also
sure.
is able to kind of quickly kind of adjust because of like her background. But I'm glad, yeah, I agree with you. I'm glad that they don't make her, which I guess could have been fun in its own right to make her some kind of like superhuman kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
But I'm glad there was like also showing vulnerability, and that she is still human at the end of the day, and
yeah,
she's really good at showing that balance and showcasing it. So yeah, it's a really fun role, a really good role for a female lead to have, and probably a very memorable one for a lot of horror fans. I know she the conventions that she's shown up at and stuff, that she's a big hit with a lot of people who love this movie, and it seems like she's really embraced it too,
Mhm.
since the movie came out. So that's great to see. It's a really great part, and she plays it very well.
Yeah, and the rest of the cast it's an interesting mix of people like in the I know you don't really say this anymore, but the mumblecore uh genre. Like you got your Swanberg and Ty West. But then you also have genre icon Barbara Crampton.
Robert
I
Crampton,
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
And it was a big, I got to talk to her, I think 2 years ago. It was about
oh
another
wow.
project, but this got brought up, and she said this in other interviews before. Like she kind of thought that she was out of this. She had her run in the '80s, and she was big amongst horror fans, and she was kind of like, oh, I can have a new life, like that's in the past, like whatever. And they came calling with this, and because they respected her work within the genre and really wanted her to do it. And she was when she talked to me, she credited the movie as really not only just rejuvenating her career, but I guess rejuvenating her drive to want to continue doing acting and doing these kind of movies. Um
Oh wow.
so it's really cool that they wanted her to be a part of it, and she loved working on it and loved how clever it was. And yeah, it's always great to see someone like her. And I loved hearing that story too, because she really thought she was out, and this really
Hmm.
gave her kind of a new lease on like movie life, I guess. So it was really
Yeah,
cool to hear.
yeah, for sure. A
Yeah,
little different from Reanimator, but
yeah, very real
there's
different.
other things, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then for some people that don't know, just in case, I mean, the bare bone plot is just it concerns an estranged family under attack by a group of mass assailants during a family reunion. That is just surface level what the movie is, because there are a lot of twists and turns in the film. But I want to know, when you first saw it, what were your kind of thoughts initially, and did you have any idea what you were kind of getting into before you saw it? Because I went in pretty blind the first time I saw it, so all the surprises were very genuine when I first saw it all those years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited about it when I saw like all the reviews back in 2011, and then when it finally, yeah, came out. No, I mean, I didn't know that we were gonna have like this, unforgettable final girl. I didn't know how resourceful she was gonna be. I mean, I figured that the twists and the reveals would be within the family, like kind of
Right,
like I knew you probably couldn't trust some of the family members, but
right,
no, I didn't. I kind of like you, I went into it blind and I kind of just went along for the ride, didn't really like guess or point at like, oh, I think it's them. Or I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
the girlfriend Z is definitely, she stands out.
Yeah,
She's
well,
kind of like
she looks like she's trouble. I think that's
yeah,
kind of the problem when you cast someone that looks like, if she's good in the role, but like she
right,
just looks like she's trouble from the
yeah.
get-go. It reminds me of, I don't know why I'm blanking on the character name in Scream 5 who turned out to be the other killer other than Richie. But I remember when
Oh, Amber,
I think Amber,
Amber,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I believe, yeah, yeah. And I remember when I was watching that movie, I was like, she looks like she's up to no good. So I don't know. I don't know if I mean,
Yeah,
I'm assuming she's at least one of them because she looks pretty menacing. So yeah, yeah.
right,
But yeah,
right,
with her, that yeah, I did think that with that girlfriend, I was like, oh man, it's one of them at least. That's
for
possibly
sure.
in on it.
Yeah, yeah, and then
Definitely
of
have a look.
course, Felix, the youngest son. I mean, that's his
Yeah.
girlfriend. So yeah, they're in on it, and then they hired. Is it three guys?
All right. Yeah.
Yeah,
To
and
you know, to invade the home.
right, and all of the masks are very. I hate
Yeah.
saying the word iconic, but iconic.
Well, they're definitely a
um,
huge part of the I mean, a huge part of the marketing, and like a huge
yeah,
identifier of the movie. So no,
yeah,
I agree with you.
yeah.
They really are, and like effective, not like totally scary, but definitely effective and like
No,
memorable. Like you
for
definitely
sure.
remember them once you see it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. Yeah, but I love all the booby traps that Aaron puts together. Reminded
It's
me
like
of like
adult Home Alone.
Right, right. But even reminded she even reminded me of Nancy Thompson from
Oh,
Nightmare on Elm
Nightmare on Elm
Street,
Street.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, like putting the whatever, the big hammer up
With
and
that
yeah.
accident they have, and then
Yeah, yeah.
she was the beam down with all the nails. So like when they come into the house, like someone will step on them.
Right,
Like, yeah,
right.
yeah, she's the best kind, and it's so over the top that it's hilarious too. I mean what she kind of comes up with. Um,
Mhm,
but yeah, I do love the setup and the execution of what she sets up for them. And then
for sure.
also the not even even the no holds barred, like she kills the one guy, and I just love how they're just looking because they're just so surprised that not only did she kill the guy, but she like pounds the dude's head in. Like she basically like grinds his head in, and when it's all done, they're looking like in their brains like, where the fuck she learn how to do this?
Yeah.
Like,
I know
I'm like,
exactly the scene you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
and I love how it starts with her doing that, and it cuts to the scene with her and her boyfriend, which is like very like kind of tender, quiet scene between them as a couple, and again showing that how tender and sweet she kind of is, and then cutting back to that and being like, oh, like there's something up with this girl too. Like she's definitely not just that girl that we just saw in that flashback, or the girl that we met as soon as she, they get to that
Right.
house. Like she's got taken level skills.
And then
uh,
I guess we should say her boyfriend, of course, is in on it as well. And so
yeah,
she kinda turns on him at the end.
yeah, and a really kind of fun reveal. And I love the answering the phone and her not saying anything, and then realizing, oh, yeah. I think the
Mhm.
cool thing about it too, because like when I was asking you like what you thought of it when you first saw it, I think my first initial thought, I was like, all right, there's someone in the family that's doing this. But
Yeah.
I think when I first watched it, I only thought that maybe it could be one or two people. Like,
Mhm.
if anything, just one. I wasn't thinking about like multiple people in the family setting anything
No.
up. I thought there would be like one bad apple that kind of was like something's owed to me, like whatever the reasoning would be. So I was just looking for that. So when it ends up being like, multiple people, because this family is just so fucked up. Um,
Yeah.
it is a really good, like genuine surprise though.
Mhm.
When you see it happen, I actually glad that it kind of works out that way. Where definitely not what it's interesting. It does what you expect. 'Cause you're like, okay, it has to be someone within the family, but then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, then like not just one person though. So there and lies like some more surprises like along the way.
Yeah.
But I definitely didn't see. I actually looking at it now when I rewatched it for this, and
Mhm.
it's hard to like watch it without knowing like, oh yeah, of course I know that her boyfriend's involved. But watching it now, I was like, yeah, he does act kind of cagey and weird. Like when he's suggesting like, oh, I can go run out, and she's like, oh, I'll go with you. He kind of makes excuses about why she can't go, and he'll just go do it. Like when I'm watching it now, I'm like, oh yeah, homie is acting really weird. He's definitely. But when I
Definitely
first
suspect.
watched but when I first watched it, I didn't even think about it. I was like, oh, like, he could just, I thought he's like maybe just protecting her. And he's like, you look out for
Right.
them, and like, I'll go do this. It doesn't make sense for both of us to go. And something happens
Right.
to both of us. That's what I thought when I first saw it. Never
Yeah.
even thought to suspect him.
Yeah. Like, he decided to finally grow a pair and, like,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
save the day.
I love that lie. He's like, oh, like I'm sure he'll be all right. Like he's basically implying that he's tough or whatever, or he can take care of himself.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, no, he can't. But thanks. It's like she like
Yeah.
immediately
Yeah.
like kind of dismisses that as like, I don't know who you. I don't know who you know, but the guy I know cannot take care of himself. And
Right.
just an example of like another funny line mixed in with all this like carnage, like the kind of dark humor that comes up in the movie that really works well. And I think it's really hard to balance horror comedy sometimes, where it's you
Mhm.
have to either one thing will be good, like the horror, and the comedy will fall short, or vice versa. And
Right.
this does a good job of like both elements working really, really well together without like it
Yeah.
feeling like awkward or like forced.
Right. Yeah, like, the dialogue is really biting and the line deliveries just make it even more perfect. But, yeah, as
Yeah,
you said, like, that balance is very perfect. And I can't even
yeah,
think of another
yeah,
word 'cause, like, you're still tense, but,
yeah.
yeah, whenever there's, like, some humor, a drop of humor, it kinda takes a quick relief out of the
Yeah,
suspense, but Yeah.
And some of it is like super dark. Like, I can see he's like yelling her guy down next to his dead mother,
Mm.
and she wants to like basically have
Have
sex with
sex.
him
Right.
next
Right.
to his dead mother, and he's just like, oh, like what's wrong with you? And she
Yeah. Yeah.
says like very matter of factly, like you never want to do anything interesting. He's just like he's like I can't do this right now, and like that. I mean,
Yeah.
stuff like that. That kind of humor cuts really well, and still to
Mhm.
take me out of it. Like it is a very absurd thing that like kind of throw in there, but still
Right.
just the
But it
nature of the
works.
movie at that point is established, and you just like you accept it, and it works. Yeah,
Mm. Right. And there's some really gnarly kills in this, like with the blender.
yeah, that's probably
uh
my favorite one actually.
yeah. Yeah. I think doesn't she say like when Crispin Crispin asks
Yeah, yeah.
where Felix is, she's like, "Oh, I killed him with a blender."
But yeah,
Like
she's
she
very,
says it so
she's very
nonchalant.
nonchalantly,
Yeah.
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 Because at that point she's like, yeah, I don't need to like perpetrate with you. I know what's going on with you too. And it's
Right.
also good. You want characters like that to get their comeuppance because they're so
Awful.
fucked up,
Yeah.
and you're like, that's what makes that one so satisfying. Even though he's a very interesting character too, because like clearly he wants the money, he wants all that, but when he has to he kills his brother, and then when he talks to the other guy like later when she's listening through the like whatever, and he's just like all emotional, like I had to kill my brother, I had, like that was like your job, and like he wants to, you can tell that he wants to detach himself from it, like when
Mhm.
once they kill the dad and it's kind of revealed like, oh look, they're in on it, and he's like basically like, Jesus Christ, did you have to do that right in front of me? Because he wants to
Like he has a
detach
moral
himself completely.
compass now.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah, yeah.
right.
A very loose one. And he's like, I thought another really funny aspect of that character too. Like it really works. And that guy plays him perfectly as well, because he's a little like smarmy, and like
Yes. Yes. That's a
yeah,
good word.
he
Yeah.
really, and also also no one in that family is particularly like tough. They seem like they are just kind of like very entitled,
No.
and
Oh, yeah.
and they're very different like versions of entitlement, but it's really interesting to kind of see that they set this whole elaborate violent plan, but they kind of like want to not be totally a part of it. They just kind of
Right.
sit back and look innocent and just react, and then let the people they paid, of course, do all the dirty
Mhm.
work. um
Mhm.
but yeah, really like interesting the dynamics and character, and because they of course could not have done any of that stuff on their own, clearly, because they
No.
don't even have like
No.
the real stomach for it. I think it's
Right,
cool.
right. I also we have to bring up the song, "Looking for the Magic,"
Like,
the
yeah.
Dwight really yeah. I love the use
Yeah,
of that. It's always
yeah,
on a loop. It's
yep.
just this, like, upbeat song, but there's all this carnage going on.
Carnage going around, yep. And they use it effectively. They use it really effectively. I love
Yeah.
when like people use like kind of like songs that don't really like go with you're like, oh, that doesn't,
Right, like an
like,
ironic yeah,
yeah. And that's
sure.
like what's fun. Yeah. What I mean, kind of we brought up the whole it coming out in 2013. Like, do you think other than probably not knowing how to really market it, do you think that is the only excuse for like the delay between like 2011 and it coming out in late August of 2013?
I'm not sure. I mean, didn't The Cabin in the Woods kinda have the same problem? Or maybe that was a different
Oh,
situation. I mean
it did kind of have it did kind of have the same problem, a very similar one where it was done uh way early. I mean, it ended up
yeah,
benefiting like
right, for
Chris Hemsworth
sure.
was what it wasn't even Chris Hemsworth when they made
Right,
Cabin in the Woods.
no. It's
And
like,
that's
who's that handsome guy?"
another good example of like a horror movie that sat on the shelf, and you're like, oh, that could be a like bad news, that doesn't bode well, and then also ended up being very unique and different. Um,
For
but
sure.
yeah, similar problem. I kind of think it could have been a marketing problem, and I don't know if they would have had that same problem nowadays. I feel like this kind of horror movie probably would have thrived even more in this kind of seems like we've had like a renaissance of horror films the last few years, that
Mhm,
they
mhm.
they don't really need to like reveal their complete hand in the marketing, and that probably would have benefit uh this movie even more if it came out today. Like the kind of more secretive kind of like this is it just basically it's interesting because you don't want to sell it as like a generic home invasion movie because it will feel
Right.
like every other home invasion thriller, but you don't want to give away your hook either. Um, and I guess
Yeah, I
like
think
the
they were
best
in
thing,
a hard spot, tough spot.
yeah,
Yeah.
and again, like I mentioned earlier, I think it is hard to really do the humor and horror thing and like completely sell that. I know like they're completely different movies, but I remember when I saw Cabin Fever in theaters
Mm,
when that came out, and
hmm.
the trailers don't give any indication of like how funny that movie actually is, the humor in it. And
Right.
I know my friends, some of my friends who saw it hated the humor. They were like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
wish it was just
Yeah.
a straight up like horror flick." I ended
Uh-huh.
up liking the humor because I thought it works really well, but I think it is kind of a tough sell to kind of really make sure you know exactly what movie you're getting because some people don't like the bait and switch,
Right.
especially
Right.
in marketing.
No, they don't. Yeah.
And horror movies are in marketing sometimes are known for the bait and switch where it's like, oh, I thought I was getting one thing and this is completely different. And sometimes different can be good for them, and then other times it's like, no, that was too different, and then you end up getting like, that happens with a lot of horror movies that get really good reviews from critics, and then like regular people see them and they're like, oh, that was not
I
it.
was gonna say, like a lot of the A24 movies, like Hereditary, I'm sure that got like an F cinema score because,
Score.
you know,
Yep.
selling it as one thing and then it turned out to be something else. And
Yep.
um
I think that
yeah.
happens with stuff like The Witch and like,
The
yeah,
Witch,
everything
yeah.
that they're just completely different from what people are expecting. But
But
I kind
I
of think
love
that
those
could be
movies,
it with
yeah.
this. I love them too, and I was really happy that I just it's just be interesting as like a director and as the writer for something like this to have to sit on it for so long because like you do get
Right.
that kind of initial reaction like because it premiered at the Toronto Film Festival and then it played at Fantastic Fest, so like a select few people saw it and then like
Mhm.
early reviews come out of that, but then you have to wait almost 2 years for the general public to finally see it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they released it at a time like late August is not necessarily a dumping ground, but it's also like
I was
the
gonna
end
say,
of
yeah, it
the
used to
the
be
rim is.
for
It
sure.
used to kind of be like end of August, early September. The last remnants of summer. Um,
Right.
but with this one, I guess like I mean, only a $1 million budget, so like it's like, hey, like we're not. There's not much that we could lose by giving it a
Right.
shot. That probably was the best possible time on the calendar too, late summer to release it and kind of see what happens. And it ended
And
up
it's
doing
like
pretty well. I mean,
that's like pre Blumhouse. The whole
yeah,
Blumhouse model is like, doing something on a micro budget.
yep.
Um,
And yeah, Lionsgate did this. Speaking of, because they did Cabin Fever as well, and they
oh,
probably know
right.
what being in that position to like have a horror movie that's a tough sell because it's not
Right,
their
right.
first time doing it. And they got lucky with Cabin Fever too, another micro budgeted like horror film, and ended up making a lot of money. This made $26.9 million worldwide by the time it was out of theaters on a
Oh,
$1 million
wow.
budget, so it made money. It made its money back. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, it's I do remember when it came out and not feeling the groundswell of like, oh, I really enjoyed watching that. Did anyone else see it? And it was kind of like, no, we didn't check it out. And
What's
it was like
that?
it was like one of those things that was way later that people were like, oh, like I really enjoyed that. And but that what kind of happens with like cult following movies, but
Right.
I
Yeah.
kind of wish other people were on the bandwagon with me when it came out because I remember I saw it with like two
Same.
friends and when we tried to talk about it with other people and they're like, "Oh, like I don't even know about it," and didn't try to see it. Now some of those same people end up watching it later and enjoying it, and they wish they would have watched it in theaters. But yeah, I remember my theater wasn't that packed for it. It was
Oh, no.
just a few of us. Yeah, it was a very I felt like one of those. It was gonna be one of those like, well, that came and went, and we liked it. uh, I
If
wish
if I
other people did.
remember if I remember correctly when I saw it, I think I saw it on, like, maybe a Friday. It was probably a Friday night. Um, I remember the theater, like, being or the audience in the theater being, like, very responsive, like, especially once you get to the climax of the movie and
Yeah,
Aaron
yeah,
starts taking out everybody, and it becomes like this crowd pleaser for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, it's too bad that it didn't get the audience that it deserved, when it first came out.
Out the gate, and
Yeah.
because it definitely deserved it, and it has a little bit of something for everyone. I love that the script is super smart. It's also
Hmm.
if if you're not really tied into how smart the script is, I mean, then it's also got some really fun and effective kills in it too. It's
Right.
gory, but not too bad considering
No.
how it could be. I mean, the blender stuff notwithstanding, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but like
they
it
they
could have
saved
gone
that for
like
the end.
they could for the end because like even the opening kill could have been much the two kills could have been much more graphic, and but you only see the aftermath of the girl laying on the floor, and then the guy you just see the blood spatter across the mirror that says you're next on it. So all that stuff could have been,
Right.
I think, a lot gorier. um I think he kind of chose the right balance of like not doing too much, and then when he needed to like let loose, like towards the end, that is when they did it, and that's the best possible outcome. Because I think if you get too much of it, you almost become numb to it. It's like, oh, well, I've already seen something so gross already, and then but yeah, by the time you get to that blender kill, you're like, oh, that's the worst thing I watched in it. That was much deserved and well
It's more
earned at this
memorable.
point.
It's more
Yeah,
memorable. Yeah.
definitely well earned at that point because you just really want to see him die in the worst possible way. It reminds me of I always forget the character's name, but the blonde hair guy in the Friday the 13th remake who's like an
Oh.
asshole the entire movie, which is like everyone hates that character, but I was like, you know what, he plays it well, and at least I
Yeah.
know the outcome is that character is going to die a really horrible death, and that would be make all that worth it. And he definitely gets a major come up as in that film. So that's kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have
Yeah.
a character that
That's
unlikable, then like finish him off in the best possible way.
right. That's a good point. And I love that it's a slasher movie with adults rather than teenagers. Not that that's
Teenagers,
like, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, not that
yeah,
that's like anything new, but I like in 2013, I don't know. It was just
yeah,
refreshing to have like a family and rather than these like high school
yeah.
kids.
And I think that also makes the conversations and the stuff that before things get completely out of hand, like the family dynamics and their discussions, so much more interesting because you are dealing with like adult characters and adult situations, and I prefer to kind of not. I mean, like of course we love like teen like
Oh yeah.
slasher movies,
Oh yeah.
but there's
Yeah.
so many of them, and there aren't like a lot like this where uh you're dealing with like adult characters with adult problems, and
Yeah.
that is a really good point to make because uh it's the slasher genre isn't necessarily known for having characters like this in situations like this before everything goes
Hits
awry.
the fan.
And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and it's so much I think it makes it even more unique, you're right, and just uh having mature characters in a movie like this. Now I say mature very loosely because some of them aren't,
Yeah.
even though they're
Yeah. They're not. No.
even though they're like older, of course they really aren't. But on the surface, you think you're experiencing very adult, mature characters until they start, interacting with each other.
Yeah, like even
Uh,
the obligatory like opening kill with, the two people having sex, they're adults. And one of whom is Larry Fessenden,
yep,
another indie filmmaker.
yeah.
So that's kind of funny that he gets they have sex and then they get killed.
Well, and then, yep, there you go.
Life's
and
lesson.
it kind of sets the tone.
Right.
Um, and I like that Simon Barrett said that he was inspired by kind of like Agatha Christie, like mysteries a bit, which you kind of tell because you have all of your main characters like kind of in tight quarters with each other, usually
Inside, right.
in the same space, and then of course all these things start going wrong, and since they're all together, you're like, oh, okay, well, there's an outside force doing this, or
Hmm.
is someone within the group a part of said plan, and you can kind of really tell like in how it's executed that was kind of the inspiration uh for it a bit, but Adam Wingard said the comedy was all Simon Barrett leaned in on it, and they also said a lot of the dinner scenes, like the arguments, were improvised and kind of just
Improvised. Okay.
yeah, and we're just very much so like either the filmmakers throwing out ideas or like even the actors being like, "Well, I've had arguments like this with my family, and can we just throw that in there?" And that's kind of what they did. And they just let them riff, and I think that's so interesting. That is because it works really well. It doesn't feel like it's something that it actually does feel like something that's unscripted. They feel like very natural kind of family beefs with each other.
Right. Yeah, they're
And,
talking over each other, and yeah, they don't.
yeah,
It definitely feels authentic.
yeah, definitely. And as far as like home invasion films go, this is probably one of the more unique ones, I think, because this is a kind of
With the
this
tonal
one and
balance,
I
yeah.
total balance. I guess like another Better Watch Out is another one that kind of does the home invasion thing and then flips it on its head in a
Yeah.
really interesting and fun
With
way.
with a little Home Alone, yeah,
With a
for
little Home
sure.
Alone thrown in there because again, because you're not expecting like this
Mm-mm.
child isn't going to be the one that's in on any of this,
Right.
and then when it does, you're like, well, there we go. That's what happens.
Yeah, that's another gem. Yeah. Love that movie.
Yeah, yeah. It's I actually rewatched that again. I try to turn
Yeah.
people on to because I know a lot of people said they still haven't heard of it or haven't seen it, and
Right.
that's a really solid one, and that's pretty much up there with my unconventional Christmas movie watching with like Black Christmas or Gremlins or Krampus or any of that.
Krampus, right?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's a really fun one as well. When you have you actually been able to turn on other friends to this movie, or like have you noticed that just people have already been involved with it, they know
Um,
about it?
I've definitely shown people this movie, and they like it. So I feel like I've done my job. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think it's like it's not mainstream. It's not something that everyone's heard of, but I do try to turn it on to people, recommend it. Because as you
yeah,
said, like I think it has a little bit of everything. Like even if you don't like horror movies, like it has that comedy, it has that family
yeah.
dynamic. I think people can relate to it.
Relate to it. Yeah.
So
Uh, yep. Um, it's one that I turned friends on because I think a lot of my friends had seen The Guest, oddly enough. But I think
mhm,
at that point in 2014, like some of my friends were catching on to like smaller movies, not necessarily more
right.
mainstream ones, and they really loved that. And they were like, "What else did this guy make?" And they're just like, "Oh, he made this," and they're like, "Oh, what? I didn't even know about that." And then they get caught up in the whole like, "Oh, this was done in like 2011 and didn't come out till 2013." They get
Mhm,
so like lost in like kind of like that part of it that they're just kind of surprised that it didn't hit out of the gate right away.
right.
Um, but he really, I go back and forth. I mean, I mentioned The Guest is my favorite of his. Um, but then rewatching this for this, I was kind of almost. I haven't watched The Guest in a little bit, so I think your next being fresh in my mind has been like, oh, maybe I like this one a little bit more. Now we'll see. Um,
Yeah. They're both
but
they're
above it,
both they're both like on the same level for me. I love The Guest as well. Like I
yeah,
remember going into that and not knowing anything about it.
anything blind, completely blind. So everything that happened
Yeah.
in that movie, I was completely thrown off. I was like, oh, well, I thought it's going one way, and
Right.
not at all, not at all
Pulled the rug
whatsoever.
under. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, pretty good at that. I wanted to bring up something about the mask. I just was just looking for stuff online while we were doing this, and they
Okay.
asked why did they choose the animal mask, and Simon Barrett said the animal mask served 2 points. One is obviously if the movie has a theme, it's what people are hiding on the inside. Sharni's character turns out to be much tougher than you think. I like the idea of using the animals to illustrate that. The scariest animal is maybe the lamb, but also you see a film like The Strangers, which I think is an amazing film, and the masks look really cool and scary. But you're also like, are these kids fashion majors in the daytime? We wanted something that looked, we wanted something that looked cool and iconic like that, but seemed real. Adam's big on everything feeling real in terms of the characters, and it was hard to believe that the Your Next characters were sitting at home spending weeks designing their masks. So, like, I guess I'm having something that was simple but effective, and not something that would take a ton of time to put together. That's actually a really
Yeah.
interesting I didn't even think about that. Think about the stranger's mask. Like, oh, they look cool, but like, why would they put so much time into like into crafting them?
I mean, you never
Yeah,
see their faces, so yeah, they really put a lot of effort into
that's the
that. What
cool
you
thing about
see,
it too. There's no
yeah,
hint of like their faces in it. Like
yeah,
it
it
really
just like
obscures
doesn't
like any
even
of their
matter,
features. Yeah,
right?
and there's moments where like the image of them is pretty scary. Like when Barbara Crampton is laying in the bed crying, and then like the one is like right next to her bed, and it's just like creeping up in the dark. I mean, it's a really effective scene, an effective moment. I really thought that it
Yeah,
worked really
right.
well, and they do. They I love that there's a simplicity to it, but they really work. And I know you want to use the word iconic, but I think at least amongst the horror community, they might be pretty iconic. If you were
Good.
to dress up like that for Halloween, someone would know who you were.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Somebody.
someone would get it. You would have to explain to maybe 80% of your friends like what you were doing, but another 20% would get it for sure. And then they talked about how long it took them to how they found an actress to play Erin. And then Adam said that Sharni is the movie. Basically, it was pretty scary going into the audition process because we didn't find anyone else that even remotely was able to get what we were going for. And for the most part, everybody that was coming in there with exactly what we did want. They were coming in with cutoff shorts and their shirt tied around their chest, and they're posing and acting tough, and it was just completely wrong. And Sharni comes in, and it was just a badass, and that's what we needed. Someone who personified the character and was that character. The other aspect of that was that the character has to be likable beyond being a badass because it's a double-edged sword. We have to draw you in because she's a real person, and then make the
Mhm.
switch believable and coherent with the whole arc of the character. And I felt like we just got really lucky with Sharni. That's interesting too. That so many girls walked in, like
Yeah,
in their best tank top, and like trying to
like
act
the
tough.
story, like
And
what you would expect, right? Like
yeah,
Jessica Biel from Texas Chainsaw,
yeah.
right?
Um, Were you before it's revealed that she grew up, in this survivalist compound? Like, did you
Yeah.
have any thoughts when you were watching the movie? Like, okay, what is this girl deal? Like, you're like, did she go to prison or what's going on with her background?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I first watched it, I don't really remember what my thoughts were, but I mean, I bought I bought that that's what it was. When you had me on for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and we talked about
Yeah,
how Jessica Biel was able to start the engine, like hotwire it.
yeah,
And remember she said like
yeah.
she had what? She was in
Oh, she has a
juvie or she
Jew. Oh,
had big
yeah.
brothers.
They do it. They do it twice. So she picks the lock, and and then I think Aaron is one is oddly enough is looking at her like, or the other character's looking at her, and she just goes like "Big Brothers," and you're like, okay, I guess that
Yeah.
explains how you can pick a lock. And then when she's doing the hot wiring in the car, she's like, well, how'd you learn how to do that? It's just like a throwaway like juvie.
So
It's not like you
I
can
went
play.
along with that. I went along with that, but I think in your next that exposition was it was more believable. Like I Sharni, that's
Yeah,
also Sharni Vincent like selling it.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, why not?
yeah.
She grew up that way.
Yeah, and and that's a different. And this is not a dig against Jessica Biel. Okay? This is
Oh
the
no.
example and it's the example
Yeah.
that we're using, but
Yeah.
it's more of a script thing too. There's a combination of like two things. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even when I saw that in theaters, those two scenes like made me laugh because I was like, all right, we have to explain how a
Uh-huh.
girl knows how to do this, and like you know, I just was like, whatever. But in this, it's the delivery and just how it's placed, where it's placed in the movie, and
Right.
and you're right, she sells it, and not much more has to go into explaining it.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it's just a few
I think
lines
it's
of dialogue. Yeah,
I think it's the best explanation that we could have gotten. Like, I mean, I don't
yeah,
know how else, she'd have all these skills, but
yeah.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
worked.
it's enough to be like, yeah, and I'm glad, too much exposition would have killed it.
Right.
Um, and I remember at first I was worried when I first saw the movie because we were getting all those flashbacks. I was like, I don't need a flashback of her growing up on the compound and doing all this
Oh,
stuff. Because I was like, don't do that. And I'm glad they didn't do it because I don't think you needed too much explanation. It was just
right.
fine,
Just enough.
uh,
Yeah,
just enough the way it was. I think anything more than that would have been kind of cheesy, uh,
for sure.
completely.
Yeah, I agree.
but yeah,
So
it does come down to having a very believable actress play the role, and she is very convincing in the role too, and completely sells it. I do love that idea that she just walked in, it was like that. And but even like, but it's also in her look, she has a natural warmth to her too.
she does.
She doesn't look necessarily like she would kick your ass. So that's like, I think that's
Right.
the therein lies the appeal. But when then she does, you believe it though. Like there isn't
Mhm.
so much in the look where it's like, oh, she's too this. I don't buy it. You totally buy it when it flips. Like when it, when she has to do what she needs to do, and it's almost so right away. I mean, like once those arrows start like shooting through the windows and stuff, and you, it's she does it so naturally that you almost don't even think to go like, why does she know like how to like
Yeah.
you stay down, you do this, you do that. You're just like, all right, maybe she's just smart, and she's like, hey, I and good in the crisis. There's no other.
Mhm.
You don't question it really, and
Like
it's all organic and natural, which I liked about it.
like when so many, you know, audience members like yell at the screen and like be like, "Why would you do that? Why would you do that?" Like,
Yeah,
uh, Erin is like the perfect version of, you know, what we want to see. Like she's making smart decisions, but as I said before, like she's not Superwoman or Wonder Woman.
yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And
You root for her and you know she'll come
yeah,
out on top.
yeah, and she ends up in, and I like that she's, I mean, all a lot of our horror movie final girls are strong and in very different ways.
Right.
Um, but I'm glad it's not. It wasn't just in the traditional sense. There wasn't, I'm glad you. I know you mentioned Nancy Thompson, but I'm glad it's just not like a carbon copy of that. I'm glad it
No,
wasn't just
right.
a carbon copy of like Laurie Strode or
Mhm.
anything like, or not even like someone like Sydney Prescott too. Like they're all very different.
Yeah.
Uh, final girls and display a different like kind of or a strength, and
Strength, yeah.
and I think it's important to have different types of them because what makes someone like Sydney so believable, and what's cool in that franchise, which is very rare, is that you got to watch her from a teenager till you know she was a woman, as an adult, a fully formed adult, and
Mhm.
you kind of see all this kind of vulnerability in her and different shades of her, but also beneath all that, uh, a certain amount of strength. But there's also her dealing with the trauma of like the stuff that she's gone through. So they're all very different. Laurie Strode's very different,
Mhm.
and the original Halloween and stuff like that too. So I love having the representation of like all these different types of women that make it to the end of these movies. Um, but also I think by 2013 to have someone as badass as this one was, um,
Right.
to kind of see that and have it not be forced and have it be so natural, and
Mhm.
uh and not feel like, oh, like they're kind of putting me on, I don't buy it. That I mean, good direction, good writing, but yeah, again, I know it sounds like we are singing the praises of Charlie Vincent, but it really is just her ability as an actress to really sell that part. And
Right.
I think it also helps too when you're making something like that. You don't know it's going to be a iconic role. Maybe you're just, it's just another part. And I don't know. I don't know if it's it could be half and half, partly of like what she does with it, and then what the viewers after they watch it, what they put on it, and what they kind of put on that
Mhm.
character, and what that character means to them, and then why that character ends up lasting, for a really long time. Because I've seen this character pop up on a lot of uh lists, like kind of the best
Final
final
girl
girls.
list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
final girl list, and well deserved to be there too, because she, definitely one of the best. I wish we could have. I mean, I would love to have gotten more. But I did. This is not something that necessarily needs a sequel. I know they've talked about
Yeah.
it before, but I would have loved to have seen her again in this kind of
Like
environment, this kind of setting.
what happens after what
After
happens at
the
the
yeah, at the
end?
end, yeah, which and to me, the ending is so perfect, and like because the movie has already like played its hand. You know what it is. You already
Right.
know like what the kind of absurdity and the kind of jokes that are like hidden beneath all this like fucked up stuff that's going on, and to have it in like that. um, I remember
It's
I
like
watched it for this. I was like, I was laughing, and I was like, oh, it was just so kind of. It's like almost like an uncontrolled, like uncomfortable. I don't know if I should be laughing because someone did gruesomely just get killed, but it's
Right.
just so like over the top and crazy that you just can't help but laugh at it.
Yeah, somebody that was coming to save them, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Cop.
yeah. The cop, yeah, to
Um,
save the day. But all he sees is like, she,
right,
stabbed this guy, and like, for all he knows, like she's the one that did all this, whatever.
right,
And
right.
yeah, there is a fun kind of like irony to all of
Yeah.
it. Like by the
It's like
time it
a
is,
it's like a twisted punchline. That's and then you get the or your next title card at the end, and then
yeah.
the song.
So so well done too. Yeah, and it's like I don't know what kind of outcome I wanted for the ending when I first saw it. You know, I of course I wanted her to survive, because at this point you're like, hey, she has to
Right.
get through all of this. Like it wouldn't be great to see her like go, or like even with the whole thing with the cop, I was like, well, no, please don't like make this a thing where they think she did it and like it goes on beyond that. But it's
Yeah.
probably the best possible way the movie could have ended, I guess.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it really does work, and it really kind of adds to the whole the type of humor that they were going for.
Hmm.
And it sticks the landing completely. Like that was my one worry when I first saw it. I was like, this is going really well, and I could see
Right.
the only thing
When's
that
it gonna go wrong?
the only thing that would screw this up is if they don't stick the landing, and it's like or some really silly explanation as to why this is all happening. I mean, you get why, but just how are they
Yeah.
gonna like wrap it up? And especially with her character, I was like, don't want to see her die, but I don't think we're going there, because
No.
the movie knows she's a badass, so they're not going to kill her.
Yeah. That
But
would be
like,
a slap in the face.
it would definitely be a slap in the face, and especially after all she's endured. And I do like the idea too. Like even and, there's like I said, there's all these themes of like people hiding stuff from each other, like and they have
Uh-huh.
secrets and like all that. Um, it's interesting too, because she does too, because when she mentions her story and she says that she grew up in the survivors compound, she's like,
Mhm.
Tristan doesn't know this yet. I haven't told him this about myself. So like, not that her secret is not nearly as bad as his, but it's like
Right.
this whole of course, but like I love that as an underlying theme for everyone. Like she's also like hiding this thing about her. That he
That's a
probably
great
would
point.
have known to have loved to known about before he invited her
Yeah.
to this elaborate scheme, because like he did not want to bring anyone that could hold their own and fight and ruin their plan.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like about all the other characters. So like even the mom, isn't the mom and like is she popping pills? I
Pills,
mean,
yeah, she's all they're all
yeah.
kind of mixed up.
Yeah.
They're all kind of dealing with their own thing, and then
Yeah.
the one brother mentions that like the thing with the cell phones, and he was like, oh, I heard from this like one person, like you could like something we do with the blocking or whatever, and then the one brother lying on the ground with the arrow in his back is basically like, oh, it's like you would know something like that, like you would like have like kind of like shady characters that know something about this. So yeah, they're all kind of like really not who they say they are, or
Yeah,
hiding
the
something.
whole thing with Joe Swanberg's character with the arrow in his back, that could have played like silly, but
It's very can be slapsticky and weird. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it
But
is
like it
silly,
works.
but it works. It just again, like that tone is just
Yeah,
right. Uh like even when he tries to go outside again and the arrow gets stuck on the wire that just killed his
yeah,
sister. Like
yeah. So
the
yeah,
moron.
speaking of really great kills,
Yeah.
because I love the setup. I love, again, it displays the comedy. There's her like one wanting to prove herself as like, because they're all
Right.
because in this whole chaos of like, should we go outside, should we do this, should we run for help, there's this argument about who is the fastest runner and who can do
Yeah.
like in the
I ran
family, right?
track. Yeah.
I ran track. Yeah. So
Uh,
it's all funny and all well and done, and then and she wants to like she wants to prove herself, and like this whole like slow motion like start, like she's really gonna like, in your mind that she's of course not gonna book it, like something's gonna happen,
yeah,
but to have it be that is like
yeah,
crazy.
I thought one of the killers was just gonna be like out with like a
And just
mallet
like
or
do
something.
and
Yeah,
just whack her,
yeah.
yeah.
But
And
then
I'm
you see
glad it
that
was that.
fine wire. Oh,
While you're around the neck. And again, another good way that Charlie Vincent plays it, because when that happens, she looks genuinely shocked. Like she doesn't look like,
Right.
oh, like
Right.
I can handle this. I've seen this. It's kind of like
Right.
she wasn't expecting that. And of course, they've they booby trapped the house, but I wonder how much the brother like knew how much carnage would actually happen, because they seem so detached from everything that's going on. But of course, they pay these people to set this up and do it. But like, yeah, I do love that she looks at it too. It's just like, fuck, like, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And also played very well by Barbara Crampton, who does a good job of like, it's almost like a fine balance, like overacting. It's not too bad, but
Right.
it's like,
Right.
but it still works. Like she feels like she is like a grieving mother, who
Yeah.
just watched her daughter get nearly decapitated by a fine
And
wire.
somebody's probably in the house, so I'm gonna go lay down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go alone. Like I like how they don't even suspect that maybe one of them is in the house, especially
I
after
know.
because she's the one that's been hearing all the bumps going on in the
Right,
house,
the
and she's like,
chandelier shaking.
the chandelier. She thinks like she's like, oh, someone's in the house. So the fact that she is doing that is that she's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go lay down, and they kind of play on that too when they were like, you should go check on your dad, and of course, the dad ends up being killed. And then when they come back downstairs, and she's like, "How's your dad?" He was like, "Oh, he just needs to like sleep it off." And they're like, "Oh, okay." Like I can't even tell at that point if she. I guess she doesn't suspect anything. She's just like, "All right, maybe he does."
No, yeah,
she doesn't really play her hand either. Like that, she might know that was kind of weird.
right,
But
right.
yeah, I thought that was pretty funny that she just like accepts it. Like, all right, guys. That's what you would do during a home invasion, is go off alone and sleep in your room by yourself.
Yeah, and I like
I'll stick together.
right. And I like, even though like once the movie does show its hand, like that Z and Felix are a part of this, like you're still tense. It's like, the movie doesn't like fall apart. Like I love that scene where Aaron is like building those the blocks of wood with the nails.
Nails in it. Yeah.
And she has Z working with her doing that, and Z comes up behind her, and then she turns around. Aaron turns around, and then Z just hands it to her.
Hands it to her.
I love this little moment. Yeah.
Because at that point, we know that she's in on it.
Right.
And how that's gonna play out. Yeah, I was like cracking up during that part too, because it's like, oh, she's trying to like find a moment to just like thwack her. Maybe it's like, no, I won't be able. I won't be able to do it. So here you go. And then I also love, just as a character moment, because like she's in on it, but she's like, I need to know probably like, where the hell did you learn how to do all this? Like, just for my own personal benefit, because like I feel like that's I still that is my favorite thing about it, is this elaborate plan, and like this guy's bringing his new girlfriend, which makes him even more of an asshole, that he would. I mean, like they would still go through it, knowing that you're bringing this new girl to that doesn't want to be, didn't do anything right. She's not a part of the family. She has no prior beef with the family. She's not one of the relatives where you have like this dissension with. Like you're bringing this person into this mix, knowing that this is going to happen. But I guess assuming that like if stuff does happen, she'll end up just kind of croaking with the rest of them. It won't be like a big deal.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
And I mean, doesn't he say at the end like you weren't going to be hurt or something?
Yeah,
I mean,
he does say, but
not that we believe him.
So yeah. I was like wondering, like, do you like, because at that point it's like desperation hour, right? He needs to say what he needs to say to, and you do kind of wonder that what is he being honest? Is he like, oh, like you were never going to get hurt? Not that fucking arrows are flying through the window. Like she would possibly get hurt.
Yeah,
she would possibly get hurt. And then he tries to like offer her a cut of the money, which at that point because everyone else involved is like deceased, would be just an even split between the two of them. And she's kind of like,
she takes
at
the
this
high
point
ground.
What kind of person do you think I am? No, I'm gonna fucking kill you for even putting me in this position. I think that's hilarious. It is always, like I said, it's always fun to watch movies like once you know what the twists are, and then like kind of wondering like again
Yeah,
at this point, like all right, watching all the other characters and like, do they give anything up? Like, do they kind of
right.
show like that something's up? And the only one I can think now is that character is Crispin, who when I'm watching it recent like for this, I was like, oh yeah, there's something off about him. The other ones just seem like they're just spoiled and entitled,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he doesn't really totally give off that vibe. He's and, especially in like the dinner scenes that they're having, it's the other ones that come off a bit more like that, which I guess they do that job with him to make him more seemingly likable than the rest of his family.
Comparably,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so you don't suspect the boyfriend like you that you're supposed to in most of these movies. Um, but yeah, it's just a really fun little mystery that I'm glad I didn't figure out when I first saw it. I was happy to be surprised. Other than Z,
Mhm.
I mean, only because of the look,
Right, right.
only because she looks like she's plotting something.
She's, like,
um,
smoking a cigarette when the mom
yeah,
first meets her, like, she's
yeah,
up to no good.
yeah. And I guess the cool thing too is that that she's up to no good, but this could also be like, hey, I don't really. It's just the whole dynamics between all of them already are so weird that
Right.
you just kind
Once
of
yeah.
buy it, like whatever.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but yeah, it's I mentioned the sequel thing initially, and I think there was something I was looking up about why they did want to do one. Uh, but would you want like I guess some movies don't need one, and there wouldn't be much to do other
Yeah.
than if you other than to follow her, Charlie Vince, Aaron's character, or even like I don't think a prequel would work too because that might be too cheesy with her character, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what you could possibly do, or I'm happy having a standalone movie like this,
Yeah,
but
I think Your Next is best as, like, as a one-off, like, I'm not a screenwriter, but if there's a great screenwriter I mean, Simon Barrett could probably come up with a great idea that would feel, like a good extension or a prequel, but it probably wouldn't
yeah,
even feel like Your Next, like, I mean, are they gonna have another home invasion? Like, I don't know.
yeah, it would probably be a little too different. I mean, which is fine, right?
Yeah. But yeah, if they
But
came up with
yeah,
a great idea, sure.
I just pulled something up here too. They thought about wanting to do it, and they said even though the movie made $26 million worldwide and the budget was pretty small, Lionsgate was expecting a bit more from the movie.
Mhm.
And uh, let's see, Simon Barrett actually said we're hoping to work with your next actress, Charlene Vincent, again soon on something. So maybe we'll call her character Erin in that film, and people can try to figure out what her intervening decade must have been like. The full answer to why there was no your next two is after your next sold, but before it was released in theaters, which was a 2-year process due to some corporate changes at Lionsgate. So there we go. At that time,
Oh, yeah.
we talked a bit about making a sequel if the film was successful. I think we had some cool ideas, but like with the guests, Your Next was never originally intended to have a sequel. We were excited to make one if there were any interest, but I never actually wrote anything down. And then I just bounced some ideas around, and then the movie flopped. And I was glad I hadn't done any actual work on a sequel. um,
Okay, there you go.
it's weird to call that a flop, though. It turned a
Yeah.
profit. I mean, it made so it opened when it opened in the US and Canada. It opened at a $7 million opening weekend. It made $18.4 million in the States, and then of course $26.8 million worldwide. It's a $1 million budget, though. I mean, I don't know what else they were kind of expecting from it. um I think today you're probably like, yeah, that's perfect, let's do another one. We're
Right.
happy with that result.
Money talks, but, I mean, even if it wasn't, like, a box office success, like, it was a critical success, I think it has it's fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, 79% fresh rating on
There you
Rotten
go.
Tomatoes, with out of 100, with 162 reviews counted. Um, Audiences on opening day, the cinema score was a B minus, which I'm not going to call that a bad one because it could have been worse for a
Yeah,
horror movie with great reviews like this.
yeah.
Um, and I guess it being a cult. I mean, I imagine it probably did well enough in like with DVD Blu-ray sales and all that, like being a
Mhm.
cult hit. Like,
Yeah,
so
word of
it is
mouth.
weird.
Yeah,
It is weird to label it a flop. I mean, I personally wouldn't call it a financial flop, but like I kind
yeah,
of don't know what they could have, much more they could have been expecting from it, though, because like even I mean, I know that we love it, but there's something about it too that doesn't feel like too much like a mainstream horror film either. Like it feel like it would find like its select audience and they would help it grow, but
yeah,
it doesn't feel like something that would appeal to just everyone on the offset. Because again, it's very offbeat and again, sometimes dark humor doesn't land with certain people, and
right.
so. But yeah, I
Yeah, it
kind of
definitely has an offbeat sense of humor, but it also doesn't have like any really like big names. I mean, not that Barbara
yeah.
Crampton is not a big name, but you know, it's more of like a niche, like
Yeah,
people
no
that love
box
the
office
genre.
draws.
No,
Yeah,
no.
more no box office draws. Little unknowns. You have some genre kind of classic people in it, like Barbara Crampton, but you know, not selling any tickets. Nothing against her. That's just like most people. I
Right.
think if you were to
No,
ask, I
no,
think
not at all.
if you were to ask most people who she is, they'd be like, but ask us, and we could rattle off a lot of her filmography. So it's yeah, sometimes you get lucky when there's a cast of unknowns in a horror film like this, and it does really well. Um, but I don't think I really don't think Lionsgate really tried to sell it as a mainstream horror film. And this is after
Yeah.
The Strangers, right? So this is
Yeah.
I feel like it could have piggybacked off that. I mean, I know it was a few years after that, but it could have had similar marketing. I think that would have been really misleading though. Um, in the end.
Yeah, I think when they marketed it, like in the trailers, it did kind of give a Strangers vibe a little bit, like when you see Barbara Crampton in the kitchen and you see the reflection of one of the animal masks, like in
Gomez.
the yeah, um, and just like the whole basic home invasion premise. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so different from the Strangers because that's so bleak.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
an
one where that
understatement.
dude, that's one word to put it. I recall seeing that movie, and I love The Strangers because
Yeah.
I actually think it deserves another movie that sat on the shelf for a while before it came out. Like, a lot of these movies have
Oh,
that in common.
right.
But again, brilliantly marketed, and then I just love the execution. I'm surprised that that doesn't have a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and the IMDb
Yeah.
score isn't all that great either. But I still think it's one of the scariest movies
Yeah.
from that time
Freaks me
period,
out. Freaks me
and
out. Yeah.
it works really well. But yeah, when you say bleak, and I appreciate the ending, I'm all for like, yeah. I mean, all endings don't need to be happy. The heroes don't always have to win. But
Yeah.
once you watch these two people go through shit the entire movie, and then to realize that they're not gonna make it through that shit, and they're both gonna
Yeah.
die, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
well, it's a Debbie Downer of a horror movie. Which
For sure.
again, this being the total opposite of that, right? I mean, because by the end of this, even though it does end the way that it does, it's still it's still funny, and there's like she's all the people that need to be dispatched are, um,
R.
yeah, and you still got her, and
Right. Right.
and it's
And
not bleak at
she
all.
probably makes it. She probably makes it,
Yeah,
right?
I'm assuming I'm gonna for my personal in
Yeah.
that movie in my brain after those credits roll, she
Right.
survives.
She's limping. She's limping away.
Don't know how they're gonna. I don't know how she's gonna the dead cop and all that, and if there's gonna be if
Explain
they're
all
gonna
that
look
stuff.
into what happened at that house thoroughly via law
Right.
enforcement. But I
Right.
want to believe that she survived, and uh yeah, because you don't really know much about her life other than what she tells them or tells
Mhm.
Z, that you don't know much about her life before she meets the boyfriend. So where she ends up next is like also its own little fun little mystery. It's just like how much of her life she got out of that and escaped from it, but like how much of her life is like really true, or what did she kind of just put together just to have like a relatively normal life, because like the way she grew up isn't normal. So like
No. No.
it's like where does she go from there? So that there's a
Yeah.
lot of interesting
What's
things I would love
next?
to know about Aaron posts. And like I don't need a sequel, I guess, but
No.
maybe write like a graphic novel or something, or
There you
something
go.
like can you continue the story, and like even in written form, I don't care. I just want to know where she ends up. Or because
That's acceptable. Yeah.
I would want to believe that she once you watch characters go through all that, it's like, yes, please. You got up, you limped away, you figured it out at
Right.
the end of the day.
Right.
And like you said, the reviews are pretty good. Vanity Fair enjoyed it, said Your Next was one of the more entertaining horror pictures of the last 10 years. Entertainment Weekly gave it a B plus and praised Wingard's canny knack for leavening his character's gory demises with sick laughs and clever Rube Goldberg twists. Razor sharp piano wire hasn't been used this well since 1999's Audition. That's a really
Oh wow, yeah.
and someone said it's like Ordinary People meet Scream and described the final shot as deliciously twisted. Slant Magazine gave the film 4 stars, stating that it brazenly murders the home invasion thriller with the dysfunctional family dramedy to great effect. Some bad reviews. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch said the film was unoriginal. The Miami Herald panned the film, calling it practically insulting and dubbed the premise idiotic. The Hollywood Reporter wrote that the film's characters were mostly unsympathetic and that more humor would have improved the film. There's a lot of humor in the movie, though. So
Right.
I guess each their own. The New York Star Ledger, in a review for the Portland, Oregon, said that gave the film a C plus rating, agreeing it was unoriginal and uninventive, comparing it to The Purge and The Last House on the Left. And the USA Today gave Your Next negative review, describing it as repetitive and saying that it did not have a purpose. What do you have to say about any of those negative reviews? Because some of them don't really make a lot of sense.
Wow, I think they need to see them. I think they need to rewatch the movie.
Yeah.
Wow, they
I
were
think
not
so, too.
fans.
Yeah.
I mean, the one criticism, like, it's not original. Like, there are only so many stories to tell. Like, is it doing anything game changing? Like, on its face, no,
Yeah.
it's a home invasion movie. But I
Right.
think with all those components, like, the cast and the tone, like the tightrope tone that they have, and just, I don't know. I think in that respect, it makes it original. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Um,
And I think, like, I guess the home invasion angle is familiar, and
yeah,
bad members of family doing it for money is familiar. But I think what makes it unfamiliar is you throw someone like Aaron in the mix, and that is what's not wholly like something you've really seen before. And I also
yeah,
think I mean I haven't other than, like we mentioned, Better Watch Out, and it was just after that. Like, I've never really seen a lot of home invasion thrillers that walk that fine line with the comedy too. I mean, they hear that someone said that it needed more laughs to be
I think it would have been a different movie.
because if they would have gone too over the top, it would have ruined it. They found the right balance, I think, in the humor, and it's all in like an occasional witty line or in the way that someone dies, but
Right.
it's not like I'm glad it doesn't beat you over the head
No.
with it, and that is I think its best asset, actually.
And I thought we were past, like, the criticism of, like, unsympathetic characters. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
I
need
hate that, man.
I don't need likable characters. Like, they need to be interesting, but they don't need to be
Yeah.
likable.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. I get the need to you want one person to latch onto that is likable,
Right.
that you want to be like you to, but if that's not the kind of movie you're making, I can support that too. So if
Yeah.
everyone in the plot of your film, if I'm watching a movie with very unlikable, unsavory people, then make them as unlikable and unsavory as you can make them, because that's what the movie is.
Right.
I used to watch How to Get Away with Murder, and I remember my friends who didn't like that show always talked about how, like, there's no one to root for. I hate that there's no one to root for. Like, everyone's like all fucked up and messed up, and I was like, well, then whatever. That's the show. And honestly, if you did watch the show thoroughly, they were unsavory and some of them unlikable, but they all had reasons for kind of being that way that
Yeah.
made them a little bit more nuanced than just like them being evil people. But some people don't take the time to like really watch that. But I agree. I thought we were beyond that time too. I don't need
Right.
everyone to be nice
I mean,
in a
again,
movie like this.
this was probably that review was probably written back in 2013, maybe.
2013, yeah.
But still.
Yeah, I agree. And also, Total Film placed Aaron at number one on their list of 50 most badass female horror leads. And Entertainment Weekly placed Aaron at number 13 on this list of the best horror heroines in film ever. So yes, she has certainly left her mark. I mean, we mentioned other people in the cast too, but it's a really fun ensemble. But it like I
Yeah.
think they said that in that interview that she is the movie. You have to be all in with her and invested with her for it to all work.
Mhm.
And she really does. I mean, I had never seen her in anything when I first saw this movie. I wasn't familiar with her at all.
She was in
Um,
Step Up 3D.
oh, there
Step Up
that is
3D.
why
Yeah. Yeah.
that is why I didn't know who she was. You know what's funny? That's the only one I haven't seen. And I don't know how I've seen Step Up 2, and then I don't know why I didn't see 3D. But then I saw Step Up Revolution, which is after that one, right?
Oh,
And I
that's
think
funny.
yeah, but I did not see 3D, so I did not know who she was. Now I might have to like just get into that, just like
Check it out. Yeah.
just check it out. That's hilarious. I had no idea.
She was also
Insane.
I think this was after, or no, maybe it came out before Your Next, but she was in that movie Bait, where the supermarket gets
Oh,
flooded from like a tsunami and there's
another
sharks.
3D movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's her shtick, horror in 3D,
Right.
and an occasional dance movie.
Right.
Wait, is she the lead in Step Up 3D?
I think so. I
Oh,
think.
that's
It's
great.
been a while since I've seen that.
Sorry, I'm just looking at. Oh, I guess. Well, yeah, she plays Natalie, a Italian street dancer who is recruited to join the House of Pirates.
Oh, wow.
And don't ask me how I skipped Step Up 3D, and I was willing to see the first two in theaters. I was like, nah, not that one, and then saw Step Up Revolution, and then saw the one after that because I think there's five
Oh,
um,
wow.
of
Okay.
them. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that. I was like trying to figure out what else she was in. I would not have pegged that, but that's why you're here.
All that necessary information.
Oh man, that's great. And then of course, and it's interesting too. Like you mentioned, Ty West
Yeah.
plays Tariq in this, but
Yeah,
uh, of course, has gone on to make a lot of his own really great movies, and
for
uh,
sure. Yeah.
including the X and Pearl. Can't wait to see
Pearl.
what happens with Maxine.
Right.
I need a trailer like today.
Yeah, same, same.
Like I've never been more teased by something not having a trailer
Right.
in my life. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
since you brought up Ty West, I
okay.
love the casting of him, and I love that whole interaction with him and Swanberg, where
Yeah,
he's like, "So you show your movies underground,
underground.
underground film
Yeah,
festivals?" Oh my god,
yeah,
I love that whole
yeah.
interaction.
It's so wonderfully like snarky and kind of like
Yeah.
condescending.
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
and probably the kind of conversations you do hear when you are involved in that world, um, which is what makes that
Yeah.
that that also really funny. Uh,
Uh-huh.
that's hilarious. Yeah, yeah. They really assembled a good group of people. I know a lot of them. They were friends and all that too. So that helps when you're doing something like this.
For sure.
4 week
Yeah.
4 week shoot, mostly at night. They said they filmed between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. During the 4 week shoot. Um,
Wow.
and grueling and tough, but they said everyone was game to be there. And you can kind of tell everyone seems like they're having fun uh,
Yeah.
in it. Like they all get the joke. They're all in on what the movie is. There's no one that looks like they're phoning it in, like from the like smallest parts to the biggest parts. It just seems like everyone's just fully
On the
involved
same
in it,
page.
on the same
Right.
page. And I don't know. I'm glad you picked this one. It's a really solid horror comedy. I'm glad that it really did find its audience eventually,
Yeah.
and that people talk about it highly today. Um, at the end of these, we do like to give a score. What you would kind of give it now, and I'll let you go first. Like, what would you give it? Uh,
What rating scale do you want to do?
um, we've been changing it so much because we've been using like
Okay.
letterboxing. We've been using letterbox again. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to
Yeah.
you. Whatever you, they'll know whatever rating system you
Okay.
use. They'll know like what.
Well, since you brought up Letterbox, I think I gave it, and I'm gonna stick with this, 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
I
All
don't
right.
know
That's
why
why we
I'm
can.
not doing 5 out of 5, but I'm gonna stick with my 4.5.
You know what? I gave it a 4.5 too when I rated it, and
Okay.
I don't. It's I'm trying to think of what would have prevented it from getting a 5. It's
Yeah.
uh, I mean that is it. It has to be
It's
like a
just like
perfect movie, right?
right.
And there's nothing necessarily like not good about your next. It's
Right.
not that
That's
one
just my
half of
gut.
like
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good rating for this kind of movie, and
I
but
mean,
also
I
being
don't think that's a bad yeah, it's not a bad rating, 4.5. So
not at all.
what would you give it?
I would give it 4.5.
Okay.
I
Stick
would
with
give it
that.
that. Yeah, I would stick with that. I think it is one of the better like horror films to come out during that time period. Uh, you know, that was a really also decent time for horror movies too. And we
Yeah.
got a lot of we got some big ones, and we also got some smaller ones like this. Um, Again, it would have been cool. Like, it is disappointing that they probably view it as a flop. I don't. I hope they've probably changed
Yeah.
their mind since in 2024. Like, I think like uh, I'm pretty sure. I mean, people were handsomely played. If the budget is what it was, um, people made money, even if it might not have been like a ton, but like it turned a profit. Um, but I think again, post Strangers, maybe they were expecting something a bit more and to catch on uh with more mainstream horror movie audiences, I guess. But um
Yeah.
I kind of think it
Well,
might have done better. It might have done better if it came out today. I don't know. I feel like people's appetites for these kind of movies have changed and they want something a little bit more unique, and
right.
that's not too obvious. Just learned that watch I saw Night Swim over the weekend. and, and here that yeah, my hope was, hey, it's a January horror film, but Blumhouse gave us one last year, and Megan was pretty good. It wasn't bad. So I had a little bit of hope, but then
You saw it.
as it unfolded, yeah, I was like, oh no, this is very much an old school January horror movie from top to bottom. It's shot really well. There's some really effective like scenes that the director put
Yeah.
together, and
No, I
and
agree. Yeah.
and Carrie Condon's good.
Yeah.
I'll give her that. And Ryan Russell, not as good as I've seen him before. So
He's solid when he's like in dad mode, but then when he
yeah,
gets infected by the pool, if you want to
oh
call it
yeah,
that, I don't
it's
know if we're supposed to laugh or if he's in on the joke. I don't really yeah, I
yeah.
wasn't sure.
And since that movie doesn't play up comedy all that much, it's like, oh, I can't tell if you're doing this on purpose or that a choice or
Yeah.
no, this movie has been mostly serious. Yeah, it's doesn't quite sell it, but I mean, when me and my friend walked out of it, we were like, that feels like something that was like a short film and probably should have just
It
remained a
was.
short
Yeah.
film. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's interesting too, but like because with Smile, that started out that way, and that ended up being good. I actually thought that
Yeah.
worked
Me
really
too.
well as a feature length movie, but man, like
I
yeah,
know.
like I said, I was excited about the whole like Blumhouse Atomic Monster officially merging, but like if they're gonna do that, we
Right.
need
Yeah.
better movies than Night Swim.
I agree.
Find us more your next quality horror films
Right.
in the bunch instead of a lot of Night Swims. And
Yes,
just because it's
please.
January doesn't mean you don't have to try. You can still try if it's
Right.
January. You did it last
Effort.
year. You
Yeah.
did it last year. I knew too because I was like that. They're not really campaigning with it that hard. Like Megan had like a huge viral campaign when it came
Yeah.
out. And I was like, I think they're just relying on like whatever horror movie fans are just go see this with Night Swim. And that's kind of what happened. So it's unfortunate. But every now and
Has
then we get good ones
potential.
like this. So
Right.
and I'm very happy that we got to discuss it. Is there anything else you want to mention about me? Anything you thought we forgot, or like and for people who I guess for people who haven't seen it and like since it come out, like um, the best way to recommend it to them if they were interested in it.
Well, since we brought up Night Swim, but I want to go back to your next. Your Next, like we said, has just enough exposition. I think in any movie really, but when it comes down to like explaining like the reveal, you either have to explain the whole thing or just give us enough. Like in Night
Right.
Swim, they give us too much.
Too
and it
much.
gets
Yeah, it's a lot.
silly as
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
But You're
Yeah.
Next, I mean, we know the who's and the whats and the whys, and it's just enough. They don't like
Yep.
go overboard with it. So,
Yep.
yeah, and it's
Agreed.
available for streaming, right? On Max.
Yeah, it is. It's available for you to watch. I
you
thought
go.
I owned it, and I was like looking for it,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find it, and I was like, oh, I thought I bought it, but no, it should be something I have like in my physical media collection. Definitely have it now. But when we were first saying, yeah, you guys have to understand when we were first setting this up, it took a while for us to get together on this, and not because we didn't want to do it. It's just like it was holidays and everyone's busy,
Yeah.
and
Right.
trying to make it work. But Jeremy is very
time
understanding
zones.
of. So I make jokes about this all the time. Every cool person that is on the show, including my co-host who lives in New Brunswick, Canada, and I live in LA. Every cool person I have on here, I never can find anyone on the West Coast. They're always like way over there, way on the East Coast.
Yeah.
It works out for me to do these early. I'm cool with it, but then like trying to figure out, when you have multiple guests on, like we've done anniversary episodes for like the faculty and stuff like that, and we had a few people on that, and it's just hard to get everyone at the right time because you don't want to be too late for. And it's usually everyone on the East Coast. So, but you know what? If it
made it work,
means that we have good, if we have good guests on like you, I am cool with it. And of course, you can come back with if you're gonna bring movies like this, I would totally love for you to come back with another deep dive for us to get into. I feel like, I could be wrong. I feel like you might be like our horror movie deep dive guy. I'm not saying that you can't pick anything that's not. I'm not saying that you can't pick anything that's not horror. But if that is the wheelhouse and that's what you want to work with, I'm a big horror movie fan too, so I'm down to always talk horror movies, especially ones
I like musicals. I like musicals too.
So all right, there you go. I do too, and I don't know. Actually, I've never asked Jackson if he likes musicals. So we've never actually discussed them on the show. So that actually will be a good one too, because I would totally deep dive some musicals. So there we go. We got two options.
We're versatile. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as always, thank you for joining us on Back to the Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives. Please keep your messages coming. I know I've sent out a few feelers on who wants to kind of be on the show, and with your deep dive picks, happy to still set up a very long schedule, which is good. This show runs every other week, so it's a lot easier to kind of set this stuff up instead of doing it every week. And we have some pretty good picks that are coming along the way. As always, like Back to the Blockbuster, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods. But we are a Playlist Studio podcast. That's our network, and you can also find us on the Playlist Studio app as well. We will also, like we said, link all of Jeremy's socials, and so you can find him on Instagram, Twitter. Check out his blog. Check out his stuff on Guy at the Movies as well. I will actually be contributing to that site again this week because I'm less busy, and so we're kind of partners in our own sense on that site too, which is kind of cool. So yeah, you can check him out there and continue to check us out here. And thank you again, Jeremy, for coming on. Love the chat, love the movie, and like I said, you're always welcome to come back whenever you want.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Peace out.